Thank you so much. There we go. Well, thank you so much for inviting me here. It's an honor, of course. I've been looking into your website before and seeing the speakers that have joined this event internationally. It's an incredible honor. It's also, like you said, it's a bit nerve-wracking doing this, talking about myself, not about my project. It's something else. It's something I haven't done before. But I was happily to say yes, and let's see where we can go. So I run this studio, Olsson Lyckefors Arkitektur, with Johan Olsson since 2004, and I'm not going to talk about that much. I'm going to talk about where I am today, how I reason about life and architecture, and a bit about my journey coming there, and what I've and discovered basically about myself going through this life. I like to start with an image of Shingo Ogami. He is the founder of Samurai Dojo, which is a karate club in Gothenburg, Sweden. I never met him actually properly. I met him briefly at a wedding, but I never actually met him. I do karate in his club today. And not until I started preparing for this lecture, I realized how much karate actually is affecting my way of life, and also the way I think about architecture, more than I would imagine. The karate style is Wado, and it has the leading words silence, simplicity, and presence. Tysthet, renhet, koncentration in Swedish. And to me, there's so many similarities with architecture and how we do architecture. The way of achieving karate in this style is really small movements and lots of effect. So there's lots to be talked about this, and I will return to that. I'm from the west coast of Sweden, so we have a studio in Stockholm, but we started out on the west coast. And I'm a country boy. I grew up in a family of mom being a mom and a dad being a teacher and a part-time forest farmer on the west coast. And there was always something going on this farm. My dad was very restless. He was a restless soul. So there was constantly a building project, and to my mom's, I don't know. Yeah, she was crazy about that. But being a kid in this place, it was amazing because there was always something going on. We learned so much from just being involved in these projects all the time. And if the pictures before where we started, this is where it's going basically. My dad, he never actually stopped constructing things, and not being an architect, not caring about aesthetics. This is where we ended up in the 20s, and I think there's much to say about this place. But the one thing or the one legacy that my dad left behind is just do it, basically. And I mean, being a kid in this environment, I was brought up being an architecture critic already from 2 years age. I mean, there was all these things going on that I reacted to, and I think that legacy of just do it is something I cherish very much. Actually, already today, I just recently heard on a pod about this man, Ray Bradbury, an American writer, and he said he kept a sign above his desk where it says, "Don't think. Thinking is the enemy of creativity. It's self-conscious, and anything self-conscious is lousy. You can try to do things. You can't try to do things. You simply must do things." And I think that's something, having that going around you at a young age, and then realize that so many years later that just do things and it becomes so much better. And that's something I bring with me every day in our studio, like just do things. So entering Chalmers and TU Delft with this background of crazy aesthetics, no architecture schooling whatsoever. Entering school and the university academy environment was quite a crash, actually. Coming to this conventional medium of this knowledge, this old knowledge of architects that we have, but I absorbed it really quickly, and I thought it was an interesting time. Being an architecture student in the early 2000s was at the breaking point. We were going from the analog to the digital. I mean, computers were entering the world of ours at this point, and I was incredibly intrigued by these forms and the aesthetics and the non-aesthetics that we were facing at this point. Unfortunately, these projects never got built, so we can't really evaluate the qualities of any of this. But it was a good time being a student. Fortunately, though, I had the privilege of working with some of my new heroes. If my dad was my first architecture hero, these three guys were my second heroes. One of them who is here tonight and will speak later, Thomas. So Gert Wingård, Thomas Sandell, and Rem Koolhaas were all three former employers of mine, and they all affected me and my architecture quite dearly. Gert Wingård introduced the importance of systematics, the balance in architecture, the order and the poetry, which just followed him throughout his career. He also introduced Scarpa naturally, and the legacy of Scarpa, and it got me thinking a different direction. Thomas, we share the same love for the northern Scandinavian architecture. This is Alvar Alto, and he represents so much about, I think, you and all the joy that brings. An architecture that doesn't actually stop with the building. It's also what's inside the building, the furniture, the materiality, the human aspect of architecture and what we do, and that has become incredibly important for us as well, for me. I think also working with Thomas at a time when there were so many creative individuals in the office at the same time, it was very important. It was some really important days, and he's also a very charming guy, so you can learn lots from that. And then being in the studio of Rem Koolhaas OMA in Rotterdam in the early 2000s was also a really important time. This was at a point when I think Rem, he allowed the younger to step up, to come forward. There was a sense of the innovation, the redefinition of architecture. What is architecture? Why do we do this? What is a school? What is an office building? What is a skyscraper? So basically, how do we and why do we do this architecture was, and the level of discussion was really high at this office, and making us all learn a lot. And it was, of course, very important days. I think what he represents to me is also a fearlessness in how we create architecture. I mean, you've all heard him tell stories about fuck the context, and I don't think he doesn't actually mean that. He means perhaps he doesn't mean he doesn't ignore the context. Maybe more like don't let yourself be slave under a context or a prefabricated idea of what there should be. Let's just do it, like Ray Bradbury said. Don't think too much. I mean, just do architecture, and then we talk about it, and then we develop it, and then it eventually will tell us something back. And so you see, the Casa de Musica was it was a villa before it was Casa de Musica, and this convention center was something we found in the trash bin. So I think that perception of how we start a process was something that we took from there. And then I met my colleague, or actually I did before. We were students, we were classmates in Gothenburg and in Eindhoven, in Delft, and Johan Olsson, he brought fashion into my life. I mean, if there's anything Johan is interested in, it's the fashion aspects of life itself. Our new heroes were like Walter von Beirendonck and Hedi Slimane of Dior, and it was really refreshing to do this, because I think what fashion brings is a sense of freedom, it's easy access, it's confidence, a sense of escapism, and you can actually do it, and you do it quickly, and then combining that with architecture, it becomes really interesting. So our first project was a fashion arena that was a competition we won in these days. But being a young architect in Sweden at this time, or I think probably even now, it's also really difficult, and we didn't have much experience. When I did work with Jack Thomas and Rem, but didn't actually know how to run a business. So we sometimes joke about how we in the early 2000s, how we were playing architecture office. I mean, we had an idea of how it should be done and how we should do it, and we ended up just overproducing incredible amount of sketches and ideas in every project. And every new project, whether it was a restaurant or a building or a stand for a fair someplace, it was the most important project that we have had ever done before. So I think that was quite fun days. I brought this image because there was firmly lifted out a quote of me saying that an architect is a composer rather than an artist, and I think it said much about the context, being a young, really ambitious architect in Sweden, where I mean, we're fresh out of school with high ambitions, and Sweden is a very conservative environment for architects, and we don't have much power. So trying to create good things in this environment, we saw ourselves more of having that role of bringing everybody together, getting everybody on that same level and strive to the same goal. So being the composer was much better an analogy for how to succeed in this place. And our tool was a platform. If there's anything we could do, can we get everybody to agree on the same vision, the same goal, and can we write that platform together? Then we could actually make so much more. We could actually achieve some great architecture with small means, and a simple project could be a really great architecture. And then I think also something that we always strive for, I wouldn't call it the hidden agenda, because it's really the agenda we always have, is to create emotion. I mean, to create experience when visiting our projects. And I think if you dig really deep on where you stand and where you create your projects, you will find something that is worth telling. I think every project has a story that can be told, and if you do succeed really well, that project will actually make you feel that story. So the emotional aspects of architecture has become really important to us. And to give you some examples, I think this is an Adolf Loos house, Villa Müller, and it represents something also that is one thing we always strive to in our project, and it's the bespoke aspect. Like, I think every new project is a new project. We try not to bring too many old ideas back into another studio, another project. We consider the plan and the section as important. We look at the materiality and these really physical values as important as one another. So that's a good example. And another one is Rangement from Le Corbusier. And I mean, it's obvious the light is important, but when visiting this place, it's so much more. It's the sound, it's the smell, and even the texture of the air in this project that creates an incredible emotional experience. It's like the architecture touches you, and this is another very important aspect of what we always strive to do and achieve. And then I couldn't be talking about these examples without mentioning anything from Gunnar Asplund, which we have in Gothenburg, and the presence of architecture. And this image is from the court hall in Gothenburg, and the extension of that court. Actually, it's another project next to it, but the staircase in particular. It's really interesting how architecture can impose on you and become physical. Walking up these stairs for the accused to receive their verdict, he made them stairs longer and shorter, slowing the motion down, so you can't actually walk fast in these stairs. You try to, but you cannot walk fast. You will feel the importance of the situation walking up these stairs. And I think when architecture really become that physical, it's amazing. And then back to Shingogami, where I am today, and some reflection on the karate aspects of me. Yeah, because this is about me, right? The architecture is not today. And I think what I have to say about karate is I can divide it up in three parts. It's how we learn it, and it's how we do it, and what we leave behind. And in so many ways that can be also related to architecture. Like how do we become architects? How do we do it? And what do we leave behind? I think we should always think about these matters. When it comes to teaching, it's interesting because in Swedish architecture school, you're handed a task, and then you're supposed to be creative day one. That was no problem for me because coming from that background where everything was allowed, I tried to get around those tasks as good as I could. But when it comes to karate, that's not appreciated. I mean, we do it the opposite way around. First, we do the ground techniques, and then we do some more ground techniques, and then we do some more ground techniques. Forever and ever, it feels like, and eventually adding creativity to that. And I think, there's so much to say about it because when you receive that muscle memory, creativity becomes natural. You can actually put a sign on that wall that says "Don't think, just do." When you have that knowledge, before you have that knowledge, you should not really do without thinking. So I think that's an interesting aspect of it. Follow the master, get that level of understanding, and then you can really be creative. Perhaps now I'm at a point where I can be that intuitive in architecture, but it took some 20 years before. There's another. If Ray Bradbury is one author, Malcolm Gladwell is another one. He wrote that book Blink. And he talks about how doctors sometimes they do better diagnosis when they meet their patient and talk to them for a little while, and then they become unsecure when they receive all the results, and they may not even do as good of a diagnosis after that. So there's something about that intuitive intellect that is really interesting, I think. All right, and then naturally. Architecture is all about tectonics. It's about the body and the space around it and the space between your body and another body, and how we move those bodies. And in many ways, that's also architecture. It's about the tectonics and how we build that tectonics and how we create space around those forms. In Vado, there's a say, Ten Chi Jin, which is Ten Chi is the heaven and ground, and Jin is the man or mankind, and the compression that it creates. And in Vado, like I said before, it's really important not to telegraph your movement. Make small movements to create lots of effect. And by compressing a body, not so much muscle is needed in order to actually achieve lots of force. And now I had to bring these figures together. We all know them. The Da Vinci's figure from Vittori and the modeler. But if these guys were to add compression and tension, they would probably have another figure. And it's so interesting because I think when you add balance and compression, these simple figures that are simple figures, they actually become architecture in many ways. At least to me, I can see so much going on in these figures that I don't with the Venturi figures. And I try to translate this back to real architecture, and then so I had to go to myself again and looking at models from the CCTV building, which I was working on at the OMA for that some time, and these are studies of Cécile Belmond. And if you look into Cécile Belmond, it's all about compression. It's all about creating so much expression with so little effort, and the CCTV building is an amazing example of that. He even made this figure of compression, where depending on how you put that construction, you will have different architecture. So I was incredibly stoked by how much karate there is in this CCTV building. And then, I didn't look further, but I'm sure I will. There's so many more examples. And I know Staffan is actually here in the audience. He's one of these guys. If you do this right, force and movement will, make you achieve things you couldn't do actually. Small guy like Sensei Ito is moving this very large man at an incredible speed and ease, creating this space and architecture around him. And then to finish this off, I think the third part that I think is so incredibly important in karate, which we all should talk and think more about, is the legacy and the respect for one another, the respect for yourself, the self-awareness, and the willingness to constantly improve, and also what we leave behind and our relationship to the world as a whole. And I can talk for another 20 minutes about this and the sustainability issues that comes with that. So to sum it up, I think karate and architecture has the power to touch. I believe good architecture speaks directly to the body, but also to the imagination. A spatial experience can be felt, while the impression of a space can tell. So everybody's wondering now, do you have a black belt? And I don't. Started just a couple of years ago. So I'm like a lot of our projects, I'm work in progress. I have a blue belt, practicing for the brown. So, well, thank you.
So now I cannot ask about the definition of being an architect. But I have a new question. What's your belt color in architecture?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah?
You said after 20 years now.
Yeah, after 20 years, I guess it's kind of black. Yeah,
black,
yeah.
Kind of, at least dark.
There are different levels of black though. You can have first dan and up till the most experienced ones. Shingo had 8th dan before he passed.
So let's say
some blackish.
Yeah.
To be humble.
You have
not
told
so much.
Yeah, I was imagining that. Yeah. You have talked about heroes today. I wonder what kind of hero you would like to be for the other people that are working with you today, and also maybe for the next generation. You have 3 kids.
Yeah. I would have to start where I started myself. I'd like to be somebody remembered for promoting the creativity. I think that's incredibly important. I think. And I hope my staff finds me that way as well. I'd like to be an advocate for long-lasting architecture, sustainable and high-quality architecture. I think that's something that we all should think about. I also want to be somebody that is involving in architecture, staff members, all our architects and the clients in the process, and to make it as good as I can be, and make everybody grow in doing that process. And I think also being a daring architect that challenges the conventional, challenging our profession and also trying to try to find new expression and new ways to do things. I think that's incredibly important. I think that's part of our what we really have to do, and then naturally doing architecture that touches and evokes emotions.
Yeah, that resonates with the talk that you have. Also, kind of was imagining your father like life process, continue developing and building and doing, and he said, "Do it, right? Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah, don't think. Do it."
This is so good. Something that you also mentioned in the talk is that in the early days you were like kind of playing architects. And in a previous internet interview, you mentioned that successfully and profitably managing an office with 20 architects at that time over a long period of time is a significant achievement, which is. Why do you think architects sometimes struggle to run a profitable practice?
I mean, I think we all struggle to be grown-ups in a way. I still do myself. But running an architecture office, I think you have to look at the origin. Why do you even become an architect, and why do you become a business owner yourself? And it's probably not because you want to make lots of money. I would imagine anybody who ever started an architecture office does it because they want to do their own architecture. They want to have that freedom to do their architecture, that you know, being able to express yourself in your own way. And it's not. It's, you know, it would even be a coincidence if you're a good architect and a good businessman.
But how to? I mean, actually, we should do it. Actually, right? Because it's often a topic that when we travel around, many people are struggling, and of course, employees even more, because in many practices, even well-known practices, global practices are not paying that well as they should be paying. So why is that an issue? It should not be that difficult, right? I don't know.
Well, I think I can only go back to myself. That picture of me and Johan, we were in the basement overproducing sketches and models and all these things. And so I think it's that will to always do better and do more and come further. We've all sit through the nights doing hand-ins of competitions. Yeah, I think it has to do something with.
Was there a moment where you thought, okay, now I need to change something? Or
I think, yeah. Well, actually, I became a father. I couldn't work as much as before, so I had to. Yeah, and that's another thing. I think being that architect is also about letting go. When do you involve others to do that architecture with you? And I think that many architects struggle a lot with developing and growing and getting new tasks. I think that's one of the things that I've been working with throughout all these years. Not one year did I do the same thing, because I had a new working role every year. So the more people you gather, your role shifts to administrational tasks. And so.
Were you enjoying more playing architects, or are you enjoying more now?
I think I'm at a good spot right now, actually. I think it's amazing to see what the office is achieving. I think it's amazing to be able to stand back a little bit and still see that culture thrive.
That's good. Well done. You built a summer house and a house with your wife, correct? Hopefully without any big fights.
No.
What did you learn from that process that you wouldn't have gained from building for other client? I mean, it's your own project.
Yeah. I think the most important takedown is that being an architect, you can easily forget that the client is actually making a decision that is a life-changing decision. It's probably the most scariest thing, frightening thing they ever did, the biggest investment they ever did, and having all these decisions coming along the way, and then being the architect and having that fear yourself made us humble about actually being an architect and take responsibility for the client, not only to create good architecture, but also to give them a good journey from that first sketch to the final moment when they enter the house. So being that rock and comfort throughout the process is something I learned, and I think we put lots more emphasis on today.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Andreas, thank you a lot for the nice talk and for the conversation. We'll have later a round of discussion.
All right.
Thank you a lot. Appreciate it.